Hi everyone, I'm Jasmine. You're listening to Faithfully Uncool, my little corner of the internet where I talk about Christianity, spirituality, and life in general. I often find myself overthinking, overanalyzing, or nerding out about my faith, so I figured I may as well do what all good nerds do and make a podcast. No matter where you are on your spiritual journey, I'm happy you're here and hope you learned something new for the road. Hopefully, you had a beautiful holiday. I had a wonderful Christmas with my family. We went up to the Midwest to visit my sister, which was freezing. I am a Virginia girl, so it does get cold here, but nothing like it does in Wisconsin and Chicago, which we traveled to, so it was a shock to the system. But we had mulled wine, opened presents by the fireplace, and even lit candles for Hanukkah, as my brother-in-law is Jewish. So it was truly a beautiful, sacred experience. Felt very grateful to be cuddled inside with my family, a Christmas tree, and a menorah. So as I record this, we are at the turn of the year. It is December 31st. We're about to close out that weird time between Christmas and New Year's where you don't know what day it is and you're sort of thinking, now what? And I know we're in the season of talking about what we want to do in the new year. We're turning the chapter, maybe just closing the book entirely and saying, that's done, moving on, thank God. But before moving on, I think it's important to go inward and not only reflect on what you want your future to be, but also on what benefited you from the past. So today, I'm taking it a bit slower and I'm going to discuss my faith this past year in 2022, what helped shaped it, and also those things and intentions I have for 2023. Now, if you're listening to this, then the new year has probably already started, so I want to say something. If you didn't have time to do a lot of reflection or that's not your jam right now, then don't fret. Sometimes our new year starts on January 10th or June or April because that's when we feel that shift to make major changes or have a moment of clarity about what our goals are. Who knows? We put a lot of emphasis on New Year's resolutions and on New Year's Day, but honestly, we're always evolving and developing ourselves. And so, if December was tough for you, if December was about survival for you, or this year was mostly about survival for you, not overanalyzing or lighting candles and seeing what you want when the clock strikes midnight on the 31st, then I get it. You don't need to have a perfect vision board and all the answers by 1 a.m. on January 1st, okay? If you're here today listening to this at the end of the year, then well done. Your journey is still happening, it's still going, and that voice inside telling you it's too late or you're running out of time to change a habit or start something new is lying. So I'm going to hop off my soapbox, but I just wanted to give that little note of encouragement in case that helps anyone out there. Maybe you're like me, and before you even get too serious about next year, or to help you get serious about next year, you need to actually consider the year you just made it through and see what helped and what didn't and just kind of go through and that shapes your intentions moving forward. So without any further ado, here's a quick, non-exhaustive list of what shaped my faith in 2022 and a bit of intentions and hopes for 2023. Let's dig into it. So, the number one thing that shaped my faith in 2022 was definitely just this newfound love for my creativity and storytelling. I absolutely just adore storytelling, love to write, and it's something that I haven't always had time to do, but in 2022, I really wanted to take more time to do it. Last episode, hopefully you were able to tune in and hear an original story of mine that I'd written a couple years back. But I've always loved writing and it's my favorite way to express myself. And so this year, I really tried to take a renewal to it and have looked back on a novel that I've been in the middle of and working on that. So, no idea when it'll be done, and writing it may also give me existential dread and make me cry as I bemoan how terrible my writing is. But writing has always been important to me, and imagination just unlocks something for me and brings me closer to God. After all, God is the greatest creator, right? So when I create something personally from my mind and put it on the page or out into the world, that really triggers this sense of, oh, okay, maybe this is your purpose. And it just really encourages me. So there's something about being able to produce something from nothing that just gives me so much excitement. What I want to do in 2023, though, is to not only be more consistent and disciplined with my creativity, whether it's the podcast, my writing, attached to my career, what have you, but also to be gentler on myself when I pursue it. So earlier I was saying a little bit ago how I think my writing is terrible, and it's so easy to want to be better, and I definitely do want to be better. But I also really tear down my work, even non-jokingly. Like there are times where I'm like, this is so awful. I don't know how I'm going to even continue. It's terrible. And I'll genuinely just feel so, so bad about myself. And while it's important to be critical of what we produce and to have high standards for our work, it can be toxic if we find ourselves determining our self-worth by those productions and never finding it good enough. You just always fall short. There's always something wrong. And so just the pressure I put on myself is not the best. It's like, hey, eventually this is going to be edited. It's going to be shared with people. Maybe you can just try to be your own best cheerleader, right? Like challenge yourself to just love yourself, to love what you do, to love what you create, even if it doesn't seem like the best thing ever. Believe in its potential to get there or to be something amazing and magical and transforming for people who really love it and are touched by what you create. And to just believe in your ability to change the world, to inspire someone, to change someone's life, to give them great hope through your art, through what you create, through what you do, because that potential is there. Hopefully, you can take that message to heart into your year as well, because that's something that I definitely like to get better at. The more serious I get about my creative works, the more critical I will be, and I would like to be critical with a fair eye and not an eye that is just bullying myself. The next thing that has shaped my faith in 2022, and really always shapes my faith every year, I think all of these things shape my faith in every year, are my relationships. So, relationships have really taught me a lot, not only seeing people's faith experiences that are different than mine, but also people that have faith experiences that are Christian, but practice it in a different way. So, for example, I've always been raised Protestant. More specifically Baptist, and currently would consider myself Episcopalian, but my boyfriend is Catholic, and so he and I go to the Catholic churches together and have done many Catholic masses together, and it's been a new experience for me, and I've honestly found a lot of appreciation in it and like it. As someone who's newer to the Episcopalian church even, I see similarities between them and definitely see the influence of Catholicism on the Episcopal tradition as well. But in general, right, I'm not trying to step on any toes with that, by the way. I don't know if any Episcopalians or Catholics are listening and you're about to point out all the differences, okay? I know that they exist. I'm just speaking as someone who's been observing for, a few months, and I've really thoroughly enjoyed going to Catholic Mass and learning about the tradition, and also just getting used to being in Mass and what to say and how to respond to the priest and how to say different prayers. One thing I will shout out is this app called Hallow. It is so, so good. It's a great, great app, and I loved it, and I listened to it all the time, even prior to my boyfriend and I dating, and it's been something that I've always loved, and so it was kind of nice when I was going to Catholic Mass with someone who was in the tradition, because then I felt like, oh, okay, this prayer, the Hallow app taught me. But then there are other prayers that I was like, oh, I actually don't know how to respond to that at all. So, or the rosary, for instance. And so there are a lot of practices that I'm not claiming to know. I'm not Catholic, but I really do enjoy just being able to step out of my own experience and meet someone in theirs. And so I think that that's a great beauty. I also have really loved, I mentioned that my Christmas holiday was a bit blended this year because my brother-in-law is Jewish, and so there are some Jewish prayers and things that I got to witness as well. And that was really awesome too. And so with me, I do believe that when it comes to our relationships, I think it's a good discipline to be open minded in your spirituality to hold space for how others see the world, letting your faith be adaptive and shift, not because it's not important or because you don't have foundational points about your faith, but because you want to have true communion with others that isn't about who makes it out on top or who's winning or who's going to heaven, but also recognizes, okay, what do you believe and why? Now here's what I believe and why. Can we talk? Right? Like, having communion with people, having fellowship with people, it's super important to have relationships with those who are of our same traditions and are of our same faith. But you also learn so much when people in your life don't think the same way that you think, including about spiritual matters. And it doesn't always mean that you all are antithesis of each other or that you're enemies of your viewpoints with each other. I think sometimes this gets looked at as too black and white. But it can be a good, I don't know if mental practice is the right word, discipline, to just expand your acceptance and understanding of what other people believe. And I honestly, I have found that sometimes this makes what I believe stronger because I know what others believe and I have great respect for what they believe and also see the similarities in what they believe and what I believe. So I like having that middle ground. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I think sometimes this gets very demonized where people kind of teach us to be afraid of what is different instead of being able to approach what is different and just having human conversations with people. If people end up thinking more like you do or you end up thinking more like them, that's amazing. But I don't think that that's the goal of every single relationship and every single conversation that we have in our life. I think there are really truly moments where you can learn quite a bit by being a safe space for someone to come and talk to you about themselves, including their spirituality. Aside from that, aside from just being able to see people's spiritual disciplines within and outside of my tradition, I'm really inspired by my mother and my aunt. They are such prayer warriors in my life. They have such strong faith. And I've just been really honored by how different family members have handled challenges and how I see so many people in my life draw closer to God in their challenges. That's always really inspiring to me. And just the selflessness and generosity people have shown to my family and I as we navigate some difficult medical news, and just relationships, seeing people's faith and their strength and their wisdom and their openness has just taught me a lot this year and been a model for me this year. And I'm just grateful to God to have so many people of different faiths, of no faith, of my faith, what have you, in my life who I lean on. And just in general, when it's outside of the spirituality of the person, people that have again been with my family through medical crises or people that have been really supportive to help me as I've moved from, one apartment to another, or people that have rallied around me when I was looking for a new job, and just different experiences where I've just approached the relationships and the people and the friendships in my life with just immense gratitude. And so that has been something that I don't want to take for granted and that I have to say truly has shaped my faith this year, and just how to be a better friend, how to be a better daughter, partner, sister, etc., has just been a blessing to witness the great examples that I have in my life this year. So the third thing that has shaped my faith is sort of an obvious one, and that's Bible studies. So I've always had a great appreciation for Bible studies, but this year, to be quite honest, I've not had a lot of time to do much, and I'm super, super slow at them. So I'm currently, when I have the time, I'm doing a Bible study called A Race Well Lived by Michelle Moore. I received it as a gift from my mother, but I believe you can get it on Amazon. But it's A Race Well Lived by Michelle Moore. It's really great. It's easy to go through. It's weekly, broken down into weeks and then broken down into days. And so it's a good Bible study. But other than that one, I can't really think of like dedicated Bible studies that I've really dived into in 2022. I think it's because in some seasons, my faith has just been in a really weird space. And I think what has honestly flourish the most is my prayer life. There were a lot of things in 2022 that I was doing for the very first time. I made a move to a larger city, being on my own, just even the smallest things to the biggest things, getting a new job. There are just moments in 2022 where I was going through something and I was looking in the mirror or I was thinking to myself, I have never done this before. And so my prayer life definitely evolved, and I got really deep into my prayer life. Naturally, I just found myself asking and praying for guidance through a lot of experiences. And there were some Bible studies I did for different seasons in terms of, churches were passing out booklets and just little note cards with maybe a Bible verse on it for Lent. And so there were small things like that that I typically, I guess I could technically call a study that I did receive and that I did try to keep up with. But for the most part, I wasn't doing a ton of Bible studies. And so my 2023 intention would just really be to do more because I know that when I do Bible studies, I have felt such vulnerability and space and comfort in being able to have that one-on-one quiet time with God. That really fuels me, that really helps me, that really shapes me, that really preps me for the day and really helps me to not approach the day with all this anxiety and overwhelm, but helps me to think more so about, okay, how do I, approach this day with a calm mindset, knowing that I'm loved, knowing that I'm cherished, knowing that, I might send a dumb email, but that doesn't define me, right? Like just the small problems that we think about, or maybe even they're big problems, but we just need that moment of quiet to feel grounded and to feel at peace so that we can approach those problems with a solution oriented mind instead of an anxiety or problem focused oriented mind. So that's my hope for 2023 when it comes to Bible studies. I also think my hope is just taking it slower and not putting pressure on myself to have a Bible study, to need someone else's words or someone else's guidance, as amazing as Bible studies are and as numerous and as awesome of resources as they are. I think there's a great power in just sitting with the Bible and opening it and reading it for yourself and getting through a whole chapter. Sometimes Bible studies are challenging because they jump from chapter to chapter. And so I don't read one chapter or one book of the Bible all the way through. I read verses at a time. And that can definitely be helpful. But I find myself wanting to take more deep dives. And sometimes that is better to do an independent study versus with a book that's guiding me. So right now, for instance, as the year closes out, I've been reading Hebrews, the book of Hebrews. It's one of my favorite books of the Bible, and I absolutely love it. So that I recommend as well. If you're someone who just doesn't orient well around Bible studies or doing workbooks and things like that, then maybe you just need a journal and your Bible and 5 minutes and you get to it, right? Like, sometimes we just have to kind of demystify spending time in the Bible so that we can make it more real and more applicable in our lives with the time that we actually have available. And so hope that helps. And my 2023 intention is that I get a lot better at this. Now, sort of related to that Bible studies note, another thing that has definitely shaped my faith in 2022 has been education. And this is a huge blessing in my life. And I think it's so nice when to bring up education because I did religious studies as an undergrad in college, and I think that I've always just been very passionate about biblical scholarship and wanting to learn more and know more. But at the end of the day, I'm not able to sit in a classroom for hours at a time anymore. That's not the way that my life is anymore. But I still have that true love for learning and deepening my faith, not only through spiritual matters and the unexplained, but also by understanding what can be explained and intellect around my faith, I guess you could say. So education has been something that I really value and that has shaped my faith, whether it's happening in a classroom or outside a classroom. And so I had the Jude 3 conference that I went to put on by the Jude 3 Project. I did a podcast episode about that and what I learned. Definitely recommend that you go see it. But that was an amazing experience to just go to a conference where people were tackling very heavy and strong questions about the Christian faith, and just being in that room of scholars and other believers and people outside of the faith, even maybe, who wanted to be in that conversation and witness those conversations. And it was just extremely, extremely eye-opening. The Bible for Normal People, I want to shout out, is an amazing podcast, and they also offer classes. And so they have an upcoming Christian nationalism course that I've signed up for. There are also podcasts out of the Center for Action and Contemplation that I really, really like. Richard Rohr, who wrote The Universal Christ, did a podcast once out of that center that was all about his book. And that was just really fascinating. And so I really love learning about Christian mysticism. And so they're really good for that. Books in my queue, books that I have lined up to read, is God is a Black Woman by Dr. Christina Cleveland. The Universal Christ, I listened to a podcast based on the book by Richard Rohr, but I have embarrassingly slowly actually read the book. So I need to return to the book and finish it. I have some books on Mary Magdalene on my shelf and books on the Hebrew Bible that I picked up from the thrift store a few months back. Like, I honestly can't give an exhaustive list of the books I want to read, not because they're not important, but honestly because I don't have the time and didn't write this in my episode script of every single one of my books on my to be read list. There's quite a bit. But if you really want to know, we can do it in a whole separate episode of books I intend to read in 2023 or hope to read in 2023, because who knows if I'll get to them. But the point is that all of the resources, whether written, spoken, an event, etc., have shaped my faith into becoming bolder, more well-rounded, and giving me tools to think about how I approach certain topics of my faith, and maybe most importantly, the best way to approach others about those topics, especially when they're sensitive in nature. And so I can't underemphasize being educated about your belief and what brings you to those beliefs more. Like, I don't think that can be like overestimated, how important that is and how important that is to the life of a Christian. A lot of us are born into our faith traditions or raised in our faith traditions. Maybe you have a big moment of deconstruction, or what people call deconstruction, of where you're just, doubting what you believe and trying to figure that out and come back to your faith as an adult. Or maybe you leave your faith, change your faith. Maybe that was a big intense moment for you. Maybe it wasn't that intense of a moment for you. But whatever that looks like for you, I do think that it's important that we have a reasoning for our faith. And so when I talked about Bible studies before and how sometimes it's important for us to just have a deep dive or an independent study, and that helps me a lot, what also helps me a lot is to get my critical thinking juices running and also dive into books that are not the Bible, that are Bible commentaries or other books or other resources that are helping me to really understand the Bible and its context. Because quite frankly, the Bible is old and ancient, and as significant as it is to our lives, that doesn't make it easy to understand or easy to comprehend. And so sometimes we have this way of wanting to just apply a verse or see ourselves in a verse. But other times it's like, hey, you might really need to understand that in its context so you can get a true sense of what's happening here, or an impact of what's happening here. Now, every Bible study session doesn't have to be a biblical scholarship study session, right? But there's definitely value in that I think should not be overlooked. And so in 2023, I really want to dedicate more time and dedicate more intentional moments to not only the Bible studies that I do that are more independent and just me and God in the quiet, but also more intention with the books that I read and learning more about, hey, if this is a part of the Bible that I kind of shy away from or don't really understand, or that really makes me scratch my head, who's written about that? Who's had a podcast about that? Is there someone I can reference about that? And just give myself that space to actually be educated, so that if and when my views differ, even when they differ from Christians around me, I have a solid foundation for why that difference exists. And in 2023, y'all, I have got a reading list to start. So let's see how far I get. Stay tuned. Okay, everyone. So that's what I got for you today. Those are my hopes for 2023 and the things that have shaped my faith in 2022. I really enjoyed doing this episode, so I hope that you all enjoyed listening. And I have some questions for you as we close out. What are your hopes for 2023, spiritually or otherwise? Was there a habit or practice you tried in 2022 that really helped you with your own faith? Outside of faith, what are some 2023 intentions? Do you just want to clean your house more or, I don't know, walk outside more? I have no idea, but I would love to hear about it. Please rate and review and subscribe to this podcast if you enjoy what you heard today. One of the best things I did in 2022 was start Faithfully Uncool as a podcast. Really, truly love it here and hope to continue doing it, and really grateful for all of you tuning in. Praying you have a moment of peace and relaxation to think about what 2023 looks like for you at your own pace. And I will leave you with this and all of the hopes and dreams that you may be carrying into the next year. I just want to leave you with one of my favorite verses as I've been reading the book of Hebrews. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. So hey, if you don't see it right now, it doesn't mean you'll never see it. Keep believing, keep praying, keep going for it, keep up the endurance for it, and hopefully you will see all your dreams come into fruition in the new year. So have a beautiful day. Thank you for listening, and as always, go in peace.